In some ways, this is an existential risk for Grammarly, right? They don't have a home, they don't have somewhere for users to go, and they're plugging that hole as fast as they can.
I think this is something that most website owners are absolutely going to jump at. To be paid to be crawled, that's a bit of a dream come true.
This is a massive opportunity of Figma, but it could be also a real big dead end, so they got to be super careful.
I always give you goosebumps, bro.
No, it's Vinod that gave me the goosebumps, not you.
You're listening to the Startup Podcast. This is a Reacts episode.
Hi, I'm Yaniv Bernstein.
And I'm Chris Saad.
And in today's episode of the Startup Podcast, we're going to talk about Grammarly's acquisition of email client Superhuman, Cloudflare using an unused HTTP code 402 to finally let people get paid for having their content crawled, the big new IPO being filed for by Figma. Is this the beginning of the IPO market opening back up? And then finally, we're going to break down some really spicy, controversial remarks on the future of AI and society from legendary VC Vinod Khosla. So the first thing we wanted to talk about today, Chris, is that Grammarly, the juggernaut AI-based grammar assistant, is acquiring Superhuman. Now, Superhuman is a premium AI-powered email client. I actually use it myself. It's what's been called by a few people luxury software. It costs $40 a month for something that's basically a wrapper on Gmail, but it is a pleasure to use. Now, this deal follows Grammarly's recent $1 billion funding round and its earlier acquisition of Coda. We actually had Grammarly and Coda CEO Shishir Mehrotra as a guest on the podcast not that long ago, so you should check that out. So Superhuman's going to keep going as a going concern, but it is now a fully owned part of Grammarly. And I think between that, Chris, and their acquisition of Coda, they're following a very interesting playbook that maybe gives us some space to talk a little bit about what is going on in AI and how are people approaching it strategically.
I think Grammarly is one of the most underrated companies around. I really love the quality of their execution. And I love the package and the kind of the delivery mechanism by which they're delivering their value, which is as a browser extension. There is this kind of general sense in the product and startup world that browser extensions are somehow bad and they're difficult to install, difficult to use, difficult to distribute, difficult to everything. I don't buy that. I think browser extensions are incredible. Once you get them installed, just like an app on a mobile phone, it's extremely sticky and extremely powerful. And I actually think that, besides glasses and headphones, browser extensions are one of the very best and richest ways to deploy AI in a way that cuts across your workflows. And so I just think people are sleeping on browser extensions. I don't know why. And I think Grammarly is just an incredible example of that. And also, they are one of the longest running sort of like passive, proactive AI assistants that have taken advantage now of all of the generative AI supercharging capabilities. So yeah, brilliant. And the fact they raised $1 billion and they acquired Superhuman. Look, Superhuman, I haven't used it. I don't like being played. And Superhuman had just the longest exclusivity waitlist thing in the history of the world. And I was just kind of like, screw you guys. And so I never, and they wanted to make me pay for it before I even could try it. And I was like, fuck off. I need to understand what this does before I pay for it. And so I was a little bit on principle, never use the damn thing. But I hear it's great. I hear everyone loves it. They got super fans. I'm curious what Grammarly does with it. It sounds like they're going to leave it as a going concern, but I don't know how it fits into their product strategy exactly.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing that I really wanted to discuss, Chris, because they've made two, on the surface of it, relatively unusual acquisitions. First, they bought Coda, and now they bought Superhuman, right? And Grammarly is, like you said, it's a browser extension, it's a grammar checker. It is very powerful, and like you said, very sticky. But they're making these interesting acquisitions, and I think it speaks to a fairly deep strategy, which is, I guess we'll see whether it's a brilliant one or a silly one, but it's something that I think they're being really bold, actually. That's what I'd say. Here's my take, and it's not only my take, but the way I see it is that Grammarly are very powerful, but they're also actually at a lot of risk from the big LLM players, right? Because in a sense, what they are doing, which used to be really kind of special, this kind of in-place grammar checking, suggestions for better content, for better ways of phrasing, has been really commodified by AI, right? You can get it from ChatGPT, but it's also built into Notion, it's built into Gmail, it's built into all of these things. So if they're not careful, you'd be like, well, they've just become a feature in LLMs that anybody can access. But what do they have? They have this incredible distribution and they have this depth of knowledge. And so what I believe they're doing, and they've talked about this as being a kind of a superhighway, is they are buying access to data, right? Coda has access to all of this, it's a productivity suite. Coda's like a Notion competitor, sort of the number 2 to Notion in a way. And they have access to all of this corporate data and all of these integrations into other tools as well. Coda went big into integrations. Superhuman, well, say no more. It has access to your email. So it nearly feels like what Grammarly is saying is we're going to use our distribution advantage and build integrations, get access to this proprietary data so that we can actually stay sticky, because we've talked about what is a moat in the age of AI. And at least where I've settled, Chris, is the closest thing to a moat in the age of AI is access to proprietary data, because people cannot copy you. They cannot copy your access to proprietary data. So that's what I think is happening here. I don't know if you've got any thoughts you wanted to add to that.
I'm not sure that I buy that, actually. I think as a browser extension that's always on, that has access to all of your browsing history and gets to peek behind every corporate firewall and every data silo in the planet, I'm not sure that data is the problem that they have. So obviously they don't have full access to the whole database with, OAuth tokens and the whole bit, but they see an awful lot. If I had to bet, I would say maybe there's a data piece in there, but I think more so it's about leveraging their product philosophy of like very glossy, very adaptable interfaces, their new war chest of $1 billion and their AI first mentality to basically build their own app suite. It's email, productivity, and so on. They want to be a tech giant. They want to be a hyperscaler. They want to be a player. And so they're like, okay, we got this extension, but we don't have any home to send people. So let's go cobble together our own Google Workspace, our own Office 365. And we're going to make it glossy. We're going to make it beautiful. We're going to make it AI first. We're going to make it whatever. That would be my guess on why they're doing this. They can't be a browser extension for the rest of time, right?
Well, let's hear what Shishir has to say. So this is a quote from the acquisition announcement. Email isn't just another app. It's where professionals spend significant portions of their day, and it's the perfect staging ground for orchestrating multiple AI agents simultaneously, right? So again, they're looking at like, how do we get all of this data fueling AI, right? Where it's like, okay.
Yeah, but see, I'm not hearing data there. I'm hearing time spent and features. So if you live in your inbox and you orchestrate agents, right? So Grammarly, you could think of it as a kind of always on assistant or agent. And it follows you around, but they don't own a home. And he's saying email is your home and it's the perfect place to launch additional agents, workflows, and assistants. So it's not so much we want access to your email, we want access to your attention and to your workflow. And which is, to me, a subtle but meaningful difference between the question of data and attention.
Look, I think it's an interesting one, right? But like, I don't totally get the strategy, but it feels clever, right? And Shishir is a very clever guy. And again, I feel it's clever and it's making good use of desperation, if I would to use that term, right? Which is where I think that Grammarly are looking a few years into the future, like I said, and see that they were valued at $11 billion or something. And it's like, a grammar checker that anyone can kind of build now by just building a simple wrapper around Gemini or something. Sure, they've got this distribution, but it's just going to be eaten away. And so they're like, we've got a massive war chest. We're going to deploy it, pursuing a novel strategy that we believe will be robust in the era of AI. And, it's actually kind of cool to watch.
It is very cool to watch. And Grammarly can't stay a browser extension forever. I think it's an incredible way to deliver value, to grab distribution, to have sticky users. I love browser extensions, but you need a home. You need a place for people to live. And you need a kind of a multi-surface strategy, whether it's data, whether it's attention, whether it's place to trigger workflows and track user behavior, or all of the above. I think it doesn't hurt to collect great assets, great teams, and stitch them together and try to fast forward to being a serious tech player beyond the browser extension. I think it's just smart all around.
All right, if you're listening to this, what do you think Grammarly's strategy is in making this acquisition? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Now, Chris, I actually wanted to start the next topic with a little quiz for you about HTTP status codes. All right, do you know what 404 means?
Yeah, it means page not found.
Right, 401.
Redirect, isn't it?
Unauthorized, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Actually, should remember that. Let me have a look. Ah,
You're quizzing me and you don't even know the
yeah,
answers? What's going on?
Well, okay. So that 401 is unauthorized. Now, 402.
Let me think. 402 is payment required.
Oh, someone's using a popular internet search engine. Yes, 402
Yeah.
is what this story is about. And it's a really interesting story. So for a long time, there has just been HTTP status code 402, payment required. That has been kind of moribund. It hasn't been used for anything, but it's just been there. And Cloudflare has just decided to use it to launch a new feature called pay per crawl. Now, Cloudflare is this massive hosting, DNS, CDN, all the things. Basically, a lot of the internet runs on Cloudflare infrastructure. And they have just launched into beta a new feature called pay per crawl, which lets website owners charge AI companies for crawling their content. So basically, if someone tries to crawl you, instead of just returning a 401 unauthorized or just letting them crawl it for free, you can now return a 402 and say, you have to pay us to crawl this content. I think it is fascinating because just last week, Chris, in Reacts, we were talking about the fact that there are all of these lawsuits. There are companies saying we won't be able to survive because AI is crawling us, taking all of our intellectual property, and we're no longer able to compete against that. So now we have this feature that is actually by one of the world's dominant internet infrastructure providers that is saying, we have a potential fix for that. We're going to give you control and say, you can let people crawl you, but you can set the rates at which you wish to be compensated. And I think this is really fascinating. Will it work? I don't know. But the fact that it's not just, some thought bubble, or it's not coming from government or anything like that. It doesn't require mass coordination across lots of small organizations to band together. No, it's this thing that is done by Cloudflare. It's currently in beta, but soon they're going to launch it publicly. And any website that wants to can basically say, if you want to crawl me, you've got to pay.
When you start having robots intermediate relationships between people and transactions and commerce, you need protocol-based payment rails that just work automatically. You need data and utility portability. It becomes mandatory. We on the show interviewed a founder, actually a group of founders that built this thing called Skyfire, which is AI to AI commerce at scale. And go back in the back catalog and find it was December 30th, 2024. And they're building basically PayPal for agents, using the existing HTTP protocol with the existing error codes or response codes to facilitate that protocol and initiate that request is brilliant. The best thing about standards is that they exist. The worst thing about standards is everyone goes and invents new ones. Using existing standards to trigger this kind of thing and to do it via protocol and to do it at scale is the future of everything. We want it all to be, super easy, low friction, interoperable. So I think that's, whoever the engineer was that was sitting in the meeting going, excuse me, there's status code 402. Like, whoever that was and whoever the product manager was, goes, that's freaking brilliant. Yes, that's the one we want. Kudos to them. And I think it's a no-brainer. That's the way things should work.
But I think there's more to this story, right? Because like you said, open standards, fantastic. But this wouldn't have been possible for basically anyone else on the internet except for Cloudflare, right? And for those who are less technically minded, I think it tells you something interesting about the modern internet, which is it's a whole lot less decentralized than you would expect. So of course you have the big cloud hyperscalers, but you also have these more edge networks like Cloudflare and Akamai. And basically, if you are doing anything on the internet, the odds are it's probably going through Cloudflare's servers, right? It's loading content from there. They've got little servers everywhere physically close to you, so it goes faster, it saves money, it saves bandwidth, and that's what they do. And because they are actually there as a kind of transparent intermediary to so many internet connections, they're the ones who can do this. They can say, we're unilaterally choosing to adopt this standard 402 and interpret it in this way. And straight away, you have got a critical mass. And now other people can jump on board and do it the same way that Cloudflare is doing it. But it's just a fascinating lesson in the internet, in a way.
The internet is not as decentralized as we would all like, and neither is blockchain and Bitcoin, actually. But it's great. It's aspirationally true, and it's technically possible, but these things tend to consolidate in weird and wonderful ways. I remember when I was back in the data portability days, and I was, some might say mired, some might say enthusiastically engaged in the open standards community. There was this saying, which is running code ends debates, or wins debates. And it was basically, we could debate the format of the JSON file or the XML file or whatever all day long, but the first person to implement a library that handles it a certain way, debate over. That's the library, it works. And this is a great example of that. It's like, not only does running code and debate, running code at scale completely eviscerates the debate. It's like, we're done, guys. We're controlling the outcome just by implementing it at scale. So, you want to hope some of these actors are more benevolent. Some of them are more standards oriented. Some of them more whatever. Some of them could be, Microsoft with Internet Explorer and just break the world. So, you hope for the best actors and the best outcome possible.
Okay, one more part to this quiz, Chris. What is HTTP code 418?
Hang on, I got to get back to Google to find out.
Oh.
No, what is it?
418 is I'm a teapot, which is an officially gazetted HTTP response code that was actually introduced as an April Fool's joke quite a long time ago.
It's also the area code for Canada, apparently.
Wow.
For the eastern part of province Quebec, including Quebec City.
You come here for all this amazing trivia, folks. So what do you think? If you run a website, do you think you might implement 402 pay per crawl? Let us know in the comments.
Or just implement 418 and just see what happens.
And have a tea party. Okay. The next bit of industry news, which I think is just a nice sign that the IPO market is alive, is that Figma, the famous design software company, has filed for IPO. And this is a couple of years after their $20 billion acquisition deal by Adobe fell through due to regulatory concerns. So Figma's kept on growing since then. They're up 48% in terms of revenue year on year. They were last valued at $12.5 billion, but have traded as high as $17.8 billion on secondary markets. So hopefully their IPO will go out at around the same level as that Adobe valuation, and a whole bunch of employees and founders and investors will do very well out of it. But I think that the more significant thing, Chris, is we've been in this IPO winter for a long time, where we've had companies doing incredibly well, growing and growing, making incredible valuations, but staying private. And it's nice to see after this time, this is probably the first real blue ribbon tech company to go public for a couple of years, probably since Airbnb or something.
Yeah, it's yet to be seen what the outcome looks like, right? It might be a big fizzle, and not because of Figma's fault, but because of the market, the time, who knows with these things, timing, wars, whatever, maybe the interest rates drop just before or just after. So, we'll see, given all the externalities. But yeah, Figma is an incredible company that deserves everything it gets. They're a classic example of these companies that believe deeply in something, work hard on pure technology and pure product, toil in obscurity for years, until they hit on the right product market fit, and then they suddenly seem like an overnight success. And just seeing founders like that get rewarded for understanding platform shifts, investing in great technology, building great product, being patient, not trying to sell services to companies, and then just completely changing the game with just like liquid smooth in-browser interactions and collaboration. I wish them the very best of luck. Also, our friend Yuki is over there. He was senior product leader at Uber. We had him on the show. He's the chief product officer at Figma. Just such a thoughtful guy, a sweet guy, and has shipped incredible stuff over there. So, I really wish them the best of luck. And not only for them, but selfishly for us in the ecosystem, as you said, Yaniv, if they have a great IPO, it opens the door for everybody else. It potentially expands all the valuations, and it restarts, or rather lubricates the production line for startups and investments and outcomes. So good news all around.
And yeah, I think it is interesting. And why is this important? Maybe just for folks who are less familiar with the sort of capital cycles and so on, is that in order for VCs to be successful, they need to be able to pay back their investors, right? And there is, of course, the kind of paper gains, right, where you get increasing valuations, and you could say, our IRR and so on is based on that. But ultimately, what investors want is DPI. They want distributions. They want cash back for the money they put in. And not only is that important for them, it's important for the ecosystem, because what usually happens is investors are only able to commit to the next VC fund and the next VC fund. They get cash back from earlier ones, right? It's kind of a pipeline, a virtuous pipeline. And if all the cash is caught up in these paper gains and investors never see cash, then they often say, well, I can't invest in the next fund because I don't actually have money in my bank account to commit towards that. So unfreezing the IPO market is ultimately what allows everything to trickle back down all the way to early stage, kind of unfreezes VC markets and increases confidence. So I think this is really good stuff. Just one other point on this one, Chris, is so the prospectus, the S1 from Figma, mentioned artificial intelligence over 150 times. So, everything's about AI at the moment. But I think there is something interesting here that I'd be interested in your thoughts on. And it's a little bit similar to what we were talking about with Grammarly, which is that for Figma, as for many companies, but them more than most, I would say, AI represents both a massive opportunity and a massive threat. Why is it potentially a massive threat? Think of the vibe coding tools. We've got things like bolt.new and Lovable and all of these sorts of tools, right? That basically say, don't worry about creating designs, just go straight to building a prototype or an MVP, right? And that's a better way to kind of iterate quickly than to do just a static Figma design. Now, why is it a great opportunity? Well, because Figma has the best design tools. It has all of the designs. And so if they can add an AI layer and they can say, don't go to some vibe coding tool, we'll be the vibe coding tool. You start with a design in Figma, and then we basically create a working MVP in Figma using AI. And I believe they've released the first version of that. They're still quite behind. So I think one of the reasons they mention AI so much is that they know that they've been in the scheme of AI where everything is moving very quickly, they've been moving a little bit slower than some. And that needs to change because they need to be the place to do all of the AI magical stuff. Otherwise, they will slowly leak mindshare and users to the places that can.
Yeah. So, any massive platform shift introduces massive new opportunity and massive new risk for the incumbents. If you think about Google Docs when that came out, it was junk compared to Microsoft Word. But the insight they had was that the web is the new platform and collaboration is the killer feature for the web. And so they started to win just on the back of easy collaboration, lightweight document authoring. And then in the fullness of time, they added all the features or many of the features that Word had, and they maybe not disrupted Word or killed Word, but certainly found an equilibrium with Word and took a massive market share. The opportunity and the risk for Figma is they disrupted, Photoshop and Sketch by basically the same insight, which is the web is the ultimate place for software, collaboration is the killer feature, and they worked their way to the ultimate sophistication that a Sketch or a Photoshop or whatever had. But now they're being subject to a new platform shift, which is AI is the platform shift, and suggesting what you want with a few words is the killer feature. It's being able to skip to prototype is the killer feature. And so, their opportunity and their risk is that their competitors are saying, screw all of this fine-tuned design nonsense, speak a few words, we'll generate a prototype for you, skip all the design stuff. And Figma has to quickly say, no, we're the vibe design tool that can lead to vibe coding, but you get all of the fine tuning with us too. You get to get in there and move the pixel and move the thing. And to do their risk and their opportunity is to do that at a pace, to add vibe design and vibe coding, high quality vibe design and vibe coding, faster than Bolt and Lovable can add high quality fine tuning and sophisticated levers and affordances for you to get in there and move things around. And so that Figma's coming from the top down and Bolt and Lovable are coming from the bottom up. Historically, this game is hard to win. It's hard to win, and the best you can achieve an equilibrium. Like Microsoft shipped absolute goddamn garbage web stuff, still garbage, which painfully I have to use every day for some of the startups I work with. And it's there you go. We've got good enough online collaboration. We can now survive in the web world. And so they sort of stopped the hemorrhaging and are able to play on the web. Figma needs to at least stop the hemorrhaging, or at best beat back some of the market share erosion to these other players.
Exactly right. And, I don't love the word vibe in this context because I think vibe implies that sort of looseness. And what you're talking about is that precision and control. In the dev world, you've got the vibe coding tools like bolt.new and Lovable and V0. And then you've got the AI-assisted IDEs like Cursor and Windsurf and Claude Code, which isn't even an IDE. And these are tools for developers to be able to do more, right? And so what we're actually saying with Figma is, if Figma is like the Visual Studio Code, it's like the IDE without the AI, how do we add AI in there before the vibe coding tools are actually able to provide good design functionality? So it's sort of like top down versus bottom up. But right now, I would say by the standards, which is very fast moving, the world's moving very fast in tech these days, Figma have been a bit slow off the mark on AI. They are not leading in that space. And so it's going to be, we mentioned Yuki is fantastic. It's going to really be a lot about their ability to execute at pace without compromising the core of their values and their quality for their user base. And that's going to be a subtext to this whole IPO.
Yeah, a fun side note. The same thing is happening for our favorite tool, Yaniv, for the podcast, which is Descript. Descript is one of those fine-tuned environments that is easier than like Pro Tools and, Adobe's audio editing software is. It was the web collaboration version of these heavy-duty audio editing tools, with a little bit of AI actually in there and a lot of collaboration. But they're now, aware of and responding to the vibe editing phenomena. And so they've actually flipped their interface to be sort of vibe first. There's a prompt right on their home screen. It's like, what do you want to edit today? And our poor editors, Ethan and Justin and the team, they're like, WTF? Where did you moved all our shit around? And so they're having to wrestle with the innovator's dilemma. We have users who are trained up on our stuff. How fast and how far can we move to make this AI first and break the UX metaphor? And their answer in this case was, fuck it, shift everything because we need to keep up. We don't care about Justin and Ethan. We care about the next million users, right? And whereas Figma's been a little bit more ginger, a little bit more careful, and they have to find their pace and deliver this stuff quickly.
But I actually think Descript are slaying it, right? They're doing everything right. And I know, Justin, you had a very late night because of all of this stuff. But if you look at it as a business, they're moving very fast. They've provided a tool that is not only something that is faster for professional editors to use, but turns everyone into an editor. I would nearly describe it as being like Canva for like audio, visual, spoken word stuff.
That's where they want to be.
They're moving very, very fast. I would invest in their IPO before I would invest in Figma's IPO. If they're selling shares, let me know if you're listening, folks from Descript. I'll buy some shares. I think they're doing very, very well. And yes, they have that little bit of innovator's dilemma, but they're just pushing right through it. And the amount of stuff you can do in Descript and how quickly you can do it is truly exceptional.
But, we're sorry for our editors. Those are our thoughts on the Figma IPO and the capital markets in general. What do you guys think? Jump down in the comments and let us know your thoughts.
Okay, on to the next topic. I heard a podcast episode that dropped today. It's from a podcast called Uncapped with Jack Altman. Yes, of the famous Altman family. This is Sam's brother. But he interviewed legendary venture capitalist Vinod Khosla, founder of Khosla Ventures. He's been doing this for decades, and he really went very deep in a wide-ranging interview, talking about, of course, what else but AI and what it means for the world, what it means for venture capital and investing. And I think he just had some really spicy takes and spicy quotes and bold predictions that I thought we could go through some of those, Chris. So the first one that Vinod said is, almost certainly within the next 5 years, any economically valuable job humans can do, AI will be able to do 80% of it, with a few exceptions like heart surgery or brain surgery. So that's definitely at the bullish end of the AI world. But again, Vinod Khosla puts his money where his mouth is. So he, as a very successful investor, is investing on this basis. He sees that the trajectory of AI is very fast moving and there's not going to be much left for people to do.
I've heard Vinod speak a handful of times, and he is just one of the most thoughtful, optimistic, bullish, pragmatic people that I've seen in the VC landscape. Sometimes you listen to VCs and they feel like they're just kind of libertarians or conservatives, that just want more money. All of their opinions are based on like, how can I get more of mine? Or their insights are sort of value free. It's like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like, obviously that's true. But Vinod is this kind of almost spiritual, interesting guy that has this deep meditation on where the world is going. And he bets really early and he bets a lot. And he's very founder friendly and he bets on the people that he believes in. So I like him a lot. And it's no surprise to me that he feels like, AI is going to be taking over 80% of jobs over the next 5 years. I'm not convinced over the next 10 or 20 years, accounting for maybe some of the diminishing returns I've been talking about with generative AI, that, embodied AI, robot arms or whatever aren't going to go do heart surgery and brain surgery too. So I think we're all enthusiastic about this. Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Is it 10 years? We'll wait and see. Is it transformers, trained on yet more and more data, or is there some new architecture in there? We'll wait and see. But yeah, I think it's a safe bet to make.
So he says, my view, the next 5 years to 2030 will look like productivity improvements. But then if I look to 15 years hence, 2040 and beyond, we're going to be in an era of abundance that's so large it's very hard for people to imagine. The simplest way to say it is the need to work will go away. The need to work will go away. What do you think, Chris? Do you agree with that? That's a big prediction.
I'm torn. Okay, on one hand, sometimes what's happened historically since the beginning of time, is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. People adapt, they create new work for themselves, they go up the abstraction layers, and everything will be okay in the fullness of time. There will be some disruptions in the economy. We've experienced them before. Those disruptions look like unemployment, they look like protests, they look like economic, Occupy Wall Street, but they're real disruptions powered by technology and immigration and whatever. But the world finds a kind of continuous equilibrium that doesn't look too different than before, at least not until you look back, 20, 30, 50 years. On the other hand, I think AI has the chance of becoming a discontinuous change, a step function change that occurs so quickly and so completely that the future will not look like the past. And there's one of two ways that could go: really badly or really, really well. Or as most things go, somewhere down the middle. The really, really badly version, it's easy to imagine. We've seen all the movies, Terminator 2 and beyond, The Matrix and so on. We know what that looks like. I think we know what the really, really well looks like as well. It's called Star Trek. Okay. That is a universe populated by technology-powered abundance. And as Captain Picard says in Star Trek First Contact to Lily on the Starship Enterprise, the economics of the future are somewhat different. We work to better ourselves and humanity. And so, yes, while work may be unnecessary, especially for the creation of economic value, we get to go be poets, explorers, dreamers, and go traverse the universe where health becomes optimized and pain and suffering become minimized, and on and on and on. We would all like, in Silicon Valley and around the world, to hope and dream that that's what's going to happen. It's not a guarantee. It's not inevitable. And I think there are people who are born out of the Silicon Valley ecosystem and mindset who are actually verging on evil villains. Peter Thiel being one of them and Elon Musk being another. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, actually, that we end up in utopia, and we all have to be very, very vigilant. Just a side note, I just watched another Peter Thiel video recently. I think the algorithm is now recommending me. If you saw the last episode, you'll know why we talked about him last episode. I saw a fascinating interview, I think it came out this week, where he was being interviewed by a conservative thinker, actually, and he was talking about the Antichrist and how he's trying to invest in companies and technologies that avoid or defeat the Antichrist. I didn't know he was such a religious nutbag. But this interviewer asked him, hey, are you not worried that these things like Palantir and so on aren't going to be the tools that the Antichrist uses to control the world? He was like, he was completely stumped. I mean, how lacking in city self-awareness or kind of self-doubt do you have to be to not even consider that? What a complete moron.
Okay. So going back to Vinod, I think the point is, like, some other things he said on this podcast is it's really just about the pace and change. He says, I've been doing venture capital for 40 years. I've never seen a cycle like this. Almost every job is being reinvented. This is even way faster and larger than .com. So he's going back again. He's an old dude, right? He's like in his 70s. He's been doing this for a long time. And he's saying that he's never seen a pace of change like this. So Yeah, again, exact timing and so on. At least the bet that he's making and the rest of Silicon Valley is making is that this is the largest wave yet. And so, obviously that's going to be very disruptive. And one of his other predictions that he's made here is that the 2030s will see a faster rate of demise of Fortune 500 companies than we've ever seen before. And, that one actually, Chris, to me seems like an easy mode prediction. Like that feels like it's pretty likely to be true.
Yeah, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. You know, as we keep saying, we've said it over and over again, that every time there's a new platform shift, the deck gets reshuffled and blah, blah, blah. And there are people that go further and they say, look, the fortune, the S&P 500 is going to be completely different, and the Magnificent Seven, that stack will get reshuffled, and a lot of, they'll be disrupted like all the legacy companies before them. I just don't know. I think, certainly Kaiser or, name your legacy healthcare company, legacy materials company, legacy whatever company. I think they will be disrupted by innovators who are AI first. I don't know that the Magnificent Seven get reshuffled that much. They have in their DNA software, agility, adaptability, first web principles thinking, and the distribution to be able to absorb this innovation and deliver it at scale. So I don't think that the Mag 7 or whatever change, maybe the stack ranks change or something. Maybe there's an extra one or two or three that get added, an OpenAI or whatever, a Grammarly, a Figma. I think it's the rest. The rest are going to be, they're going to either adapt or die from some Silicon Valley based AI powered, disruptor. Yeah. So that, that YC segment we had quite a few weeks ago, Yaniv, we talked about that, the first item on their list is we were looking for disruptors, not people that help legal companies or law firms, people who disrupt them, not people who help logistics companies, people who disrupt them, not people who help healthcare companies, people who disrupt them. And so I think they're the ones to watch out for, and they're the ones that are going to be real powerhouses to follow in the future.
And that's completely congruent with what Vinod Khosla is saying, right? So the Magnificent Seven are 7 out of 500 in the Fortune 500. And it's like, it's everyone else, I think, who's going to see. Like, I just think there's going to be a lot of those companies that will go away. And that's what he's betting as well. So one more point that he made is he said, the biggest risk we might face that I worry about is China using both good AI, cyber AI, warfare AI, but also socially good AI like free doctors to everybody on the planet, and to embed their political philosophy. So this is an interesting one. It's a very American Western-centric take. Is he saying perhaps China will pick up the slack, take up the mantle that the US has given up, and help make the world a better place for everyone. And by doing that, people will like China more. And I'm like, well, yeah, but maybe that's not so bad. I don't know. Like, I think definitely in the context of great powers struggles, the possibility of AI to be a way of projecting soft power is enormous, right? Because you can give so much to so many people with this technology. But, if China does it instead of the US, either way, the world seems like it benefits.
It's an interesting one. The US has benefited from multiple dimensions of soft power for decades, from Hollywood to the tech companies kind of expressing American values to harder power like military power, and also the power of the dollar as the default fiat currency. I don't know that we want to live through the transition from American leadership and dominance to something else, because the transition, put aside the outcome, the transition will be messy and painful and fraught with danger. Whether or not you believe American leadership has been net good or net bad, any transition will be very, very dangerous and disruptive. And the idea that AI is a new form of power, which of course it is, and AI tools with their cultural values embedded is a new form of influence, which of course it is a very interesting idea. I will say that for the most part, I feel like the US and the US Western aligned powers are just shooting themselves in the foot a lot of the time. It's like, it's not that China's winning so much as that the US is stumbling and falling. And it's, through the corruption of, money and polarization of media and the celebrity culture and, all this sort of stuff. And, I've been hanging out in Dubai, and I went to this facility that was like a DMV. It was like a kind of a government-run facility. Yaniv, on the big screens on the walls, they had the 4 or 5 KPIs for the office in real time displayed on all the big screens. You know where you get your next number, like next up is this person, next up is that person. It's a DMV, right? And it was like the customer happiness score and the time to see an agent score and the whatever score. And it's like, it's not so hard to set KPIs, define policy around those KPIs, and make everybody live up to those KPIs. But the US just spends forever arguing these silly wedge issues and just making it seem like these dichotomies exist where they don't exist. And China's sort of a little bit in that area where it's like, we don't need to have a messy argument. We don't need this messy democracy thing. We're just going to go pour money in, deploy the tool, deploy the capital, deploy the strategy, have a 100-year vision, and win. And it's no wonder that kids these days are sort of ambivalent about democracy. They're like, whatevs. If it works, it's good. It's like, they don't know why democracy matters, and they don't see it working very well for them. And that's a very dangerous place to be. And yes, this is a really interesting risk that I haven't heard before, is like, it's not about China just using it to improve their productivity or using it to impose their will, but actually using it to seduce the world towards their hegemony, to their new world order. And that's a real possibility. It's a really interesting insight.
Again, I don't want to come out as like pro CCP. I think the Chinese Communist Party has a lot wrong with it, a lot to answer for. But I just think we should be clear-eyed about this. Whereas like when the US or Western countries give aid, it's because they're the good guys. But when China gives aid, it's a seduction. It's like there's this double standard that blinds us to the reality, which is
100%.
Which is like, no, is it a seduction or is it them actually helping the world? And, the truth is soft power never has purity one way or another. But ultimately, it's a win-win. And if China is better at giving that win-win to the world, then it deserves to dominate, frankly. That's what's so tragic about the US giving up that position of leadership.
You're so right. There's so much embedded and inherent bias in the words we choose. From regime to government, from killed to murdered to died, from terrorist to, militia to army, hostage to prisoner, right? These words are all they're often used to obfuscate the truth of the equilibrium or the comparability between the two things, to cast one as good and one as inherently bad. So you're right.
Well, you judge by your actions, right?
No, yes, this is the problem. Most people, most of the time, are paying attention to words, not actions. And actually, most dilemmas and confusion would evaporate if you paid attention to the actions and not the words. I heard this recently, and I'm gonna steal it. Words are often used to obfuscate the truth. Actions are often usable to reveal the truth. And I think this is true for countries, for governments, for people and for companies. And I think if we stopped looking at words and rhetoric, we would be better off.
All right. So to bring things back to Vinod Khosla one more time, Chris, because this is just to finish off. I think there's a really nice quote from him, and this is talking about venture capital. You mentioned what a great investor has been, and this is at the core of the Silicon Valley ethos. I think he articulated it beautifully. He says, most people reduce risk to increase the probability of success. I do the opposite. Start with, I want high consequences of success. I don't care about the probability of failure, right? So if you think about it from a statistical point of view, Chris, you've got expected value as like the probability of something multiplied by its magnitude, right? You've got a 5% chance of $1 million outcome. The expected value is 50,000. He's saying, I want high consequences. So not low risk, but a actually high risk of something, but if it does pay off, it pays off big. And I think that's just a beautiful articulation of what makes Silicon Valley and that whole ecosystem a special place.
You know what? Honestly, I have goosebumps. I'm not going to lie. There are so few people.
I always give you goosebumps, bro.
No, it's Vinod that gave me the goosebumps, not you.
You tell yourself that.
There are so few people and so few places who think like this. Truly, deeply, like in their DNA, think like this. They're so wrought with indecision and managing downside risk all the time. And it's like hesitating when you're trying to jump a gap, right? The hesitation is what's going to kill you. And I can't tell you all the founders I work with to help them with their fundraising and to help them with their story and help them with their execution and their strategy. And up and down the stack is just hesitation and fear and hedging and indecision, not just from them, but from their operators or their team or their investors or whatever, their board. And it's just this painful, painstaking process of building consensus and, explaining why the upside is so exciting. And meanwhile, there are just a few people, not even all of Silicon Valley, a few people in Silicon Valley who are just going to blow by everyone because there is no consensus to build. There is no risk to manage that they're obsessed with. There is just leap as fast and hard as you can. And if you fall, so fucking what? So what? Next. And that's like, I'm telling you guys, if you want the big outcomes, the big boy outcomes, that's where your brain has to be. And just encourage everyone listening to, if you dream of having that kind of success, that's the attitude you need. If you want to just have lifestyle businesses or middling success, you're happy to, just buy a Lamborghini, then you can ignore me and you can ignore Vinod.
So Chris, I think if people want the best advice, they should go to Vinod Khosla. But if he's not taking their calls, I know you love to work with people and help them. So where can they find you online and get that help?
You can learn about my advisory work over at chrissaad.com/advisory or subscribe to my newsletter at chrissaad.com/newsletter. How about you, Yaniv?
I'm on LinkedIn trying to make it a less boring place. I love getting connection requests from TSP listeners. So let me know that's where you come from and I'll happily accept your request. All right, Chris, that was a good one as always. Have a great day.
All right. Catch you later. Bye-bye.
That's the pod.